Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel where we explore timeless stories of faith and courage. Today, we're journeying back thousands of years to the rolling hills of Bethlehem to uncover the story of a young shepherd boy whose name would echo through history. David. Long before he was a king, David was the youngest of 8 sons, tasked with a humble but vital job, tending his father Jesse's sheep. This wasn't a glamorous role. It was lonely, demanding, and often dangerous. Imagine being out in the wilderness, just you and a flock of sheep, with the constant threat of predators lurking in the shadows. This was David's everyday reality. But David wasn't just a shepherd, he was a guardian. He didn't see his flock as just animals. He saw them as his responsibility, a trust given to him by his father. He once told King Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth." Can you picture the courage that took a young boy, armed with only a staff and a sling, facing down a lion? This wasn't recklessness. It was a deep sense of duty. He was protecting his family's livelihood, and he would risk his own life to do it. This was David's training ground, where God was shaping him, building his courage, and strengthening his faith, one challenge at a time. Meanwhile, a shadow was falling over the land of Israel. The formidable Philistine army had gathered for battle in the valley of Elah, and among them was a champion like no other. A giant named Goliath from Gath. He stood over 9 feet tall, encased in bronze armor, carrying a spear with a head that weighed more than a bowling ball. For 40 days, morning and evening, Goliath would stride out and mock the armies of Israel. He would shout, "Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." The Israelite soldiers, including David's 3 oldest brothers, were terrified. Their hearts sank every time they heard the giant's booming voice. The entire army, from the lowest soldier to King Saul himself, was paralyzed by fear. Hope was dwindling. Back in Bethlehem, David's father Jesse was worried about his sons on the front lines. He called David in from the fields and said, "Take this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them." Once again, we see David's faithful stewardship. Early the next morning, he left the flock with another shepherd, packed the provisions, and set off as his father had directed. He wasn't just an errant boy. He was a son, honoring his father's wishes and caring for his family. His obedience was just as much a part of his character as his courage. When David arrived at the camp, the scene was chaotic. The army was shouting the war cry, but there was no advance. It was all noise and fear. As he was talking to his brothers, the unthinkable happened. Goliath stepped forward and bellowed his usual challenge. David heard it with his own ears, and he saw the Israelite soldiers shrink back in terror. But David's reaction was completely different. He wasn't filled with fear. He was filled with righteous indignation. He turned to the men standing near him and asked, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David's words, full of faith and fire, quickly reached King Saul. Saul summoned the young shepherd, likely expecting to see a seasoned warrior. Instead, he saw a boy. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him," Saul said, with a hint of pity. "You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. This is the pivotal moment." This is when David connects the dots of his life, when his past experiences in the lonely pastures suddenly illuminate his present purpose. He doesn't see a giant, he sees another predator threatening the flock, this time the flock of Israel. He looked King Saul in the eye and said with unshakable confidence, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep, I went after it. I struck it and rescued the sheep. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God." And then came the powerful declaration of faith. The moment David realized he could and would defeat Goliath, he said, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." It wasn't about his own strength. It wasn't about the size of the enemy. It was about the size of his God. The same God who was with him in the quiet fields, protecting a single lamb, was the same God standing with the armies of Israel in the valley of Elah. David knew that his past victories weren't his own, they were God's. And if God could deliver him from a lion, he could certainly deliver him from this man. His experience as a faithful shepherd gave him the unshakable confidence to become the champion of an entire nation. Saul, moved by this young man's incredible faith, agreed. He tried to dress David in his own tunic, his own coat of armor, and a bronze helmet. But it was all too big, too cumbersome. It wasn't David. This armor represented human strength, the world's way of fighting. David took it all off. Instead, he walked toward the valley, armed with what he knew, his staff in his hand, his shepherd's bag, and his sling. He stopped at a stream and carefully chose 5 smooth stones, placing them in his pouch. This wasn't a desperate, last-ditch effort. This was the calculated action of an expert. David knew his weapon. He had spent countless hours practicing with his sling, protecting his flock. It was an extension of his own arm. As Goliath saw David approaching, a shepherd boy with a stick, he was insulted. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. David's reply wasn't a boast. It was a prophecy. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Then David ran not away from the giant, but towards him. He reached into his bag, pulled out a stone, placed it in his sling, and with a powerful, practiced motion, he let it fly. The stone soared through the air and struck the Philistine right in the forehead, the only spot unprotected by his helmet. The giant staggered and fell face down on the ground. The battle was over. A shepherd boy, armed with his faith and a single stone, had defeated the unbeatable giant. He showed everyone that day that true strength doesn't come from armor or weapons, but from a heart full of faith and a life lived in service and obedience. David's bravery wasn't born in that valley. It was forged in the fields, protecting his father's sheep, trusting in God with every sunrise. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible story. If it inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the stories that shape our world. See you next time.